So in today's video, I'm going to be walking you through the step-by-step process that I would follow to build a directory as a complete beginner. I'm going to specifically help you get started if you have never ever used any no-code tools before, or any other types of tools for that matter, to help you start building momentum for your directory. This is a process that I and many other people have followed plenty of times to get their ideas off the ground as non-developers, and it is something that you can start actioning today. Let's get into it. Friends, what's going on? Welcome back to the channel. So today's video is going to be one that has been requested quite a bit, but more privately than in the comment section. I get a lot of people who watch my videos and who reach out to me and want to know, what specific tips I have for getting started. And the truth of the matter is, if you think about the time that we're living in, we've got ChatGPT, we've got YouTube videos on pretty much every single niche. And despite all of that, it's still so hard to just get the first version of whatever you're trying to do off the ground. And I've been thinking about, why is that? And the reason why that is not that we don't have enough information at our disposal, it's that we have too much information at our disposal. And what too much information leads to is overanalysis. And so ultimately we end up in this cycle where we watch a YouTube video on this, or we basically read a case study on that, and it creates this cycle of needing more information in order for us to get started. And really the cure to all of this is momentum. And momentum just simply comes from taking action, no matter how small the action is. And so the process that I'm going to be walking you through today is the process that I follow whenever I am either trying to build a new business or learn a new tool. And it just allows me to get a quick win on the board and then to basically build on those wins over time. And before you know it, you've got an entire directory up and running. Now, before I get into it, this wouldn't be a proper YouTube video if I didn't first sell the dream. So here's a quick little overview of, the directory that we're going to be working on. Shouldn't be here, but it's still here. My course, the local directory playbook, is now live. You can sign up. If you watch this video, you find it interesting, and you feel like you just need some more in-depth stuff, this is basically what it's about. I'll just go and have a look through, the course overview, where I kind of break down what the individual things are that I cover. I basically go deep into how to build directories with no-code tools. If you are someone that is kind of interested in learning all this kind of stuff, I basically set it up so that if you are starting at zero and you just want to build something, then this will help you get going. Okay, sales pitch over. What we're going to be doing is really breaking down an entire directory at a high level, what it is that needs to be done. And then we're going to think about what are the step-by-step actions that we can take in order to build momentum as fast as possible. I've got a lot of fun examples. If there are questions, definitely let me know in the comments down below. Other than that, let's get into it. Okay, so the first tip is for anyone who has been doing a lot of research into, what tools they should use into their directory and how it should potentially be set up. Stop. No more researching. Now it's actually time to start doing things. And the best way to get started is just by building out a very basic version of your directory in something like Airtable or Notion. Now, why is doing this so important? For a few reasons. And number one, it's actually quite practical for the building of your directory, because by building out a directory in Notion, you're actually going ahead and you're going to start collecting information that you can then later on use in your full directory build. Number two, you can actually make your Notion directories look incredibly nice by using gallery views, table views, tags, all those types of things. So before you even fully commit to building your directory, you can actually get it out there and start getting feedback from people. And then finally, it's just a really great way for you to start get a win on the board. And that is really what you need. The key to taking this type of action is that it will allow you to build momentum that will then ultimately feed into all of the other steps that are to come when it comes to getting your directory off the ground. Now, if you want a practical example of someone who did exactly this for their directory, let me show you NoCodeSupply code. Now, you may have watched my one-on-one chat with Corey that I did on this channel a few weeks ago. And one of the things that stood out to me is before NoCodeSupply code became the absolute killer looking directory that it is today, it actually started off as a Notion library or a Notion directory. And I remember those days because his Notion directory with all of his code snippets was being shared on Twitter, it was being shared in LinkedIn, and it was just really incredibly popular in the community. And so using that as a starting point allowed him to get it out there and to get feedback from people, and that ultimately led to the actual building of something like NoCodeSupply code. Now, if you're wondering, hey, what does this actually look like? Here is what Corey shared with me. He kindly actually sent me a link to his now not available Notion directory with all of the different resources that he was curating before he started NoCodeSupply code. So you can see in here, we've got all of these no-code resources like tips and apps that you might want to use. And he applied a whole bunch of tags, you know, the different types that there are. You can apply your own filters. And he also did this for, you know, made in Webflow sites. So he just went in here, found a whole bunch of websites that were created in Webflow, added all of the relevant information that you needed, and then you can really make it look nice and good by, you know, creating, you know, the list view of it, or in this case, even the gallery view of this. And as soon as you get it to this stage, and you really don't need to have a lot of listings in order for this to be incredibly useful, you can actually just start sharing it with people, and that is really what will allow you to start getting feedback from people, and it's really what will allow you to start building momentum. Now, as soon as you have your Notion directory all up and running, you've got an idea of, you know, the kind of information you're collecting, and people are giving you good feedback around what it is that you're doing, then it's actually time to start using more specialized tools to build out our directory. Now, the tools that I dive into are Webflow, Airtable, Whalesync, Make.com, and a few other ones. And the main reason why I choose those tools is because they are visual tools. So you can see in real time what it is that you're building. And I have found that, especially compared to coding tools or some of the more complex tools, it's a lot easier to get the hang of if you are a complete beginner. Now, in order to get the hang of all these different tools, you are going to need to have an approach that will work for you as someone that has never built this before. And so typically what I like to do is start off simple and then build into more complex stuff over time. One of the simplest ways to learn how to build your website in Webflow is just by starting out to build out the landing page for your directory. Now, this here is useful because as soon as you start building out the landing page for your directory, you'll, one, learn how Webflow works, and two, you'll be able to you know, articulate what your directory is about a lot better. Now, this part here does not have to be complicated. It is very straightforward. All you're really doing is you're creating this page here. You'll create, you know, basically a preview of, you know, the types of listings that will be available in your directory. You'll create a nav bar, you'll create a footer, you might create, you know, like a featured section. And this is really all you need to do in order to get started. Now, even if you are a complete beginner, I am convinced with the different tools that are out there right now, you could get something like this up and running in 2 to 3 hours. And if you can build this one page, then you'll also be able to build additional pages. And so typically what I also recommend doing is to then starting to create the about page, where you can basically share your story and your mission for your directory, and then also basically add a way for people to submit listings to your directory in case they find your page. And so all up, all you really need to do in order to get started is to build 2 to 3 static pages in Webflow for your directory. Now, as soon as you get to the point where your Webflow landing page and your about page is up and running, you have really, in my opinion, done the hardest part. You will still need to learn some additional tools, and the tools that you're going to need to learn next are Airtable and Make.com, but you can actually learn how those tools work by doing the next part in your directory build that is incredibly important, which is to do high quality market research. Now, when market research is mentioned, people oftentimes think this is the part that can be skipped, which it can be. However, if you skip it, you might end up building something that no one wants, no one needs, and people can't discover. So this is typically the part where I'm saying, like, this is where you want to dive in, understand how database tools work, understand how automation works, and while you are doing it, also do keyword research and do a competitor analysis. Now, there are 2 main things here. Now, the first thing that we want to do is we want to figure out if someone is looking for our directory, hypothetically, what are the kind of key terms that they would put into Google that would lead to our directory ideally. Then we want to figure out how many people search for it, Does it fluctuate throughout the year? And then we also want to figure out what are those keywords that are the best for us to target with our directory build, and who else is competing for it. So what we also want to do as part of our market research is to do our competitor audit and analysis. Now, typically what I do is I just do all of my keyword research inside of my Airtable database. Now, I have an in-depth video on this channel. I'd highly recommend checking it out if you want to, get the hang of Airtable, get the hang of automation, and it will really give you also a good strategy in terms of how you can kind of figure out how you should be targeting different people. But basically what we're doing is we're using tools like Google Keyword Planner to basically get an idea of what it is that people are searching for. Then we get our information into our research database in Airtable, and you'll have to kind of configure your own little fields that you want to work with. And then what we do is from our list of, in this case, thousands of keywords, we really want to identify the top keywords that we want to go after. And so again, check out the video if you want a more in-depth explanation as to how we pick what those target keywords are. But as soon as we've kind of figured out, what those keywords are, what we can do is we can actually develop a strategy around how we need to structure our directory in order for us to actually attract the right type of traffic. Now, what will happen is with all these keywords, there will be people that will also be creating content and resources for those exact target keywords. And so what you want to do before you commit to the full build is actually figure out who those competitors are. And so what I've done here is I've got a list with all of the main competitors that are ranking for my target keywords. And then I have a whole separate table where I break down each of my competitors in even more detail. So you can kind of see here, I kind of did like a bit of a breakdown, kind of explains who the business is, kind of understands what they do well, all those kind of things. And all that information will allow me to then be more strategic in how I approach building out my directory. So there are really two birds that you're killing here with one stone. One, you're actually doing high quality research that will really set some really good foundation for the actual build of your directory. But then you're also learning how to use tools like Airtable. You'll also be learning how to, set up logic and workflows that automate large parts of this process in tools like make.com. And that is really what you'll need to understand in order to then start building out the MVP for your directory. Okay, so step 4 is to build out your MVP. Now, what is your MVP? Your MVP is basically the first ever version of your directory. And really what you want to optimize for here is speed, not quality. One of the things that I see is a huge stumbling block for a lot of people is they try to make the first version of their website, of their directory, the end all be all. And whilst it is important to ensure that you have a certain degree of quality, the most important thing that you're optimizing for here is speed. And so what you want to make sure of is that you're keeping things super simple and only focusing on the most essential parts of your build that will allow you to add value to potential website visitors. Now, there are two key things that we're going to need to do here. One, we're going to have to set up our pillar page, which is our overview page, our all listings page, and our detail page. Now, if we go and have a look on our website to kind of see, hey, what is it that, or how does a pillar page look like? It's basically this page here. So it basically is a collection of all of the listings in a specific category. Now, in certain instances, you might have multiple different listing types. So in my cases, I have running races, and then here I have run clubs. Every single listing type will have its own pillar page, and then within each of those pages, you're going to have your individual listings listed that will then lead to your listings detail page. Now, I do want to say that I'm onto the second iteration of this page here. So there are still, it's definitely an improved version of what it was before, but there's still heaps of things that need to be fixed and need to be improved on. But the way that you want to approach this is really just focus on the essentials first, and then just know that because you are in control of the build, that you can actually iterate on it over time. So all we really want to do is we want to jump into our Webflow project, and we want to go ahead and we want to start by creating our pillar page. And really all you're going to need for that first iteration is just like a header section. Then we also just need to then connect our individual listings. And then once we have all of that, we will be in a position where we can then create template pages that we can then dynamically populate with information inside of our Webflow database. Now, the Webflow database is called the Webflow CMS, and I want to quickly show you how it works. basically, every single time you create a collection, you are creating a template page that you can then dynamically populate with information. So in this particular case, I've created a collection for my race series. And so if I then go in here and I search for something like, I don't know, let's go pick this event here. Then what I'm able to do is I'm actually able to populate all of these individual fields with data that I can then map back to these individual pages. And not just can I map it back to those individual pages, I can then also use information that sits inside of there to create my preview cards that then ultimately lead to that page. And so really what you end up with is this page here where you can drive people to, where they'll get an overview of all of the different listings that are available on your site. And if you want to be extra fancy, yes, you can also add things like search and filtering in there. And then what you want to do is just allow them to navigate to your listing detail page. And this is really where the key conversion happens. And so what people will be able to do is, for example, click on the register now button, or if it's, for example, Airbnb, book a stay. If it's a talent directory, fill out a contact form. But this is ultimately where you'll start adding value to the businesses who you are listing on your site. Now, the next part to all of this is going to then be to populate your database with information so it creates all of these individual listing pages that will then start ranking in Google. Now, this is where Airtable comes back into play. And so what we want to do is we want to create basically a database version of what we're going to be sending to the Webflow CMS. And so here you can see I've got a little bit of a preview of, say, a listing in here. And then what we want to do is make sure that once our information is populated inside of our Airtable database, that information syncs directly to our Webflow CMS so that we don't need to manually add that information inside of Webflow. Now, the tool that I use in order to make this happen is a tool called Whalesync. I talk about them tons on the channel because they are hands down one of the best automation tools to use when it comes to two-way syncing. I have made tons of videos on how to build listing pages and listing detail pages, so I'd recommend checking that out. And if you're interested in learning more about it, just go and check out Whalesync. It is really a tool where you can't go wrong. But now one of the challenges that you're going to face is, okay, how do we actually get information about all of the different listings into our Airtable database in the first place? And that is where we move on to the fifth step. Now, the fifth step is all about finding data, enriching data, and then populating our database with information. Now, one of the things that you want to avoid doing from the first moment where you start doing this is to start over automating things. This is something that I see a lot of people do, and all it leads to is massive confusion, and that then basically halts momentum, and then you end up just spending heaps of time researching a gazillion different ways to do things without actually doing it. So what I actually recommend doing first is actually going through this process manually first. And that actually brings me right back to the first step, which is why it's a good idea to build this inside of Notion first. When you're doing this in Notion, you'll have no choice but to find all of this stuff manually. And as soon as you start finding it manually, you actually have a really good understanding of where the businesses or people that you want to list in your directory actually have the information. So you'll be able to find out, is it inside of Airtable? Is it, inside of Instagram? Is it on Google My Business? And as soon as you get a good understanding of where all this information already sits, you can actually set up workflows that will then allow you to automate the process of collecting data and syncing it into Webflow. So what exactly is it that we do here? There are really, like I said, three key steps. The first thing is to set up workflows that will allow us to find large amounts of data related to our directory. So that can be, in my particular case, finding, running races or run clubs to add. Then we're going to run enrichment workflows where we then basically do a deep dive into one of the listings that we found. And then finally, we also run a workflow that basically cleans and formats our data so that before we send it to the Webflow CMS, it formats it in a way that works nicely with our directory setup. That can mean, for example, formatting links. It can mean, adding certain types of tags. It can be, adding events, that type of information. And so if you combine those 3 steps, you can actually automate large chunks of this. Now, I've got, again, an in-depth video on this channel. So if you want to learn more about it, I'm going to link to the video where I walk you through this step by step. But really what we're going to be doing here is we're just going to be setting up workflows that serve certain types of purposes. So for example, here I've got a workflow that basically goes and finds running races in different locations. I also have a workflow that basically retrieves information from people's Instagram accounts. And so really, despite the fact that it starts as a manual process, a lot of the things that you can do here are actually highly automatable. And that's what will ultimately allow you to have thousands and thousands of listings in your directory. Now, that brings me to step number 6, and this is really the final part in the build of your MVP, and that is to add CMS-specific pillar pages. Now, just for simplicity purposes, I call this SEO pages here, but basically what you want to do is you want to create a bunch of sub-pillar pages that target specific types of keywords. Now, once you go and do your research into what it is that people are searching for, you're actually going to realize that a whole bunch of people search for very specific terms. So for example, they'll search for things like 10K running races near me, or 10K run Toronto, or 5K run Toronto, or you'll also have, marathons near me, those types of things. And what we want to do is we want to create a resource for people searching for that specific term that in Google's eyes is the most useful resource that is out there. And the way that we can do that is by using the Webflow CMS to create all of these category or location specific pages. So if we go and have a look at what this looks like in real life, we've got the running directory that has a page dedicated to only running races in Montreal. So that way we've got, it all pre-filtered for that specific search term. We also have running races that are filtered by, for example, the type of race it is. So if someone clicks on marathon, it will take you to a page that has all of the marathons that are happening near them right now. And you can really take this to the nth degree. But really the point of all of this is that when then someone comes into Google and types in something like running races near me, that we appear somewhat high on the actual page. And so as soon as you start creating all of these individual sub pages, we're going to have a traffic source that over time accumulates so much that we drive very specific high intent traffic to certain pages, and that ultimately leads to more conversions. And so if we have a bird's eye view of what our first version of our directory looks like, we have our homepage, our about page, and our list your business page that I mentioned in the first part. And then we have our directory set up, which is going to be our pillar page, which basically lists all of our different listings of a specific type. Then our CMS or category specific or location specific filtered CMS pillar pages. And that ultimately then leads to our listing detail pages where the ultimate conversion happens. And if you do an incredibly good job with, creating high quality listing detail pages, then you'll end up seeing a lot more people having success on your platform, and that will just make it so much easier for you to attract even more traffic and to make sales. Now, ultimately, what I wanted to do here is not to basically tell you that you need to do all of this at once, but it's to give you really a step-by-step process that you can follow if you have no experience whatsoever building anything online. So just to recap some of the key parts again, first of all, create your page in Notion, create your directory in Notion so you can start collecting information, kind of get the hang of how databases work and how you build front ends. Step number 2, get the hang of Webflow, build out the landing page for your directory, build the about page for your directory and the list your business or profile page in your directory. Learn how Airtable and Make.com works by learning, by doing your customer research, by doing your keyword research, that type of stuff, and then build the MVP for your directory. Keep it super simple. Learn how to build your pillar pages and your detail pages. Then tie it into your Airtable setup with your database, and then set up workflows for collecting and automating data. There are videos on all of this, so a lack of information is not going to be the issue. Now, if you are then at the point where you've then created all of those pages, then it's just a matter of setting up the CMS pillar pages, which are basically filtered pillar pages where you can rank for specific terms like 5K running races in Ottawa, whatever it is that your directory does. And with this, as soon as you hit the publish button, you'll start to see that your site indexes in Google, and you'll slowly but surely start attracting traffic. Now, this is it. Now, the option that you have now is to really go out, do even more research into this and figure out how you can do certain types of setups. Or you can do what Matt, someone who just recently joined the local directory playbook, did when he was in your position, which is to actually just stop learning stuff and start doing stuff. And so what Matt did is he built a directory called Tattoo Friendly Onsen. Now, I want to stress that Matt had no experience in building anything online prior to starting to work on this. And now, within 29 days, he went from knowing nothing about Webflow, Airtable, Make, all those kind of things, to publishing the first version of his directory. He's already generating traffic. It's really just like the starting point for him. But this here should kind of show you that really the key to success here is not more information. The key to success here is action. And so, this is what you could achieve in 30 days if you actually just heads down and just do the work, go through the individual steps. And once it's out there, then the part where you start to monetize and promote your site becomes so much easier. You'll be able to start reaching out to different businesses, basically tell them about your site. You'll be able to introduce, certain types of business models like premium listings. You'll be able to do a whole bunch of different things, but really everything that you will lead to that point is just built on taking one step at a time. So again, just to reiterate, because this is important, if you are, just in this paralysis analysis of what tools should I use, just build your Notion directory today. It's free to use, allows you to get started immediately. Once you have that, create a Webflow account, use my affiliate links in the description down below, and just learn the basics of Webflow by building out the landing page for your directory and then creating the about page and the list your business page. This is something that you'll be able to figure out in an hour or two. Then do market research, and while you're doing your market research, get the hang of how Airtable works, get the hang of how automation works. This is another thing that might take you maybe 3 to 4 days to really take to the next level. Then start building out your MVP. Keep your MVP simple. Just focus on creating your pillar page, your overview page, then create your listing detail page so that you can kind of understand what information needs to be displayed. Then start working with setting up data collection workflows, and then finally add your detail pillar pages and smash that publish button. Those are the moving blocks that will allow you to go from knowing nothing about building sites to having a published directory. And as soon as that directory is live, all good things are to follow. Okay, I'm going to leave it at that. I'm going to leave a link to all of the videos that dive deeper into these individual topics down below. If there are any questions about it, please do let me know. Other than that, I'll see you in the next video. Bye.